Okay, awesome. We're here with Harvey Rayner. We're talking Quasi Dragon Studies. Uh, so Harvey, you were just telling us for people who are now listening to the recording that there's been a couple updates to, well, I don't know how much people knew beforehand, so we can just talk about it. So it's Quasi Dragon Studies. It's coming out August 22nd, right?
Right.
On Verse. The way it'll work is you get these base tiles and you can combine the base tiles to create composites. When you do that, the base tiles are burned and a new composite NFT gets deposited to your wallet. And there's all sorts of variety in the composites. Maybe we can see that. I don't know if you have the composite builder up, but if that's something we could look at, that'd be cool today. And also, there are some special composites that does the image change if somebody gets one of these special ones, the white or the black dragons, or
Yeah. So the color space changes, so it makes this distinctive black or white kind of color space, or dark or light color space. Um, but other than
okay,
that, everything else more or less, and it does pick some colors out from the original tiles, but it's yeah, it does transform that. So they're very distinctive in the series.
got it. And so you need there's characteristics with each of these base tiles, and they kind of have to fit together like a puzzle to really for any composite, but you need a specific configuration to get these special tiles. And those are called black dragons and white dragons. And there's a theoretical limit of 50 black dragons and 5 white dragons. I say theoretical in the sense that there could be fewer than that, but I guess, have you programmed it in so that there could not be any more than 50 blacks and 5 whites?
The way it works is um, there's 50 black dragon configurations or tile configurations, so it's the first person who mints one of each configuration. I could show that on my screen actually.
Yeah, I think I gotta change it so you can, there, you should be able to share now.
Oh, so many. There we go. Have you got that? Can you see my?
Yes.
You can see this. So hang on.
So this is a basement.
Well, I'm just going to show the. Oh, okay. These are the configurations of tiles for the 50 black dragons. So it's just. I mean, there's actually 6 single tiles in here as well. So somebody's going to get black dragons just for one single tile. So there'll be a rush on these, I imagine. But they also it's not any single tile. They have to be tiles with no joining edges, which would be like that one, for instance. That would qualify as a black dragon. We can see what it looks like when we review it. So it turns the color space dark.
And is that going to be in the metadata? How many joining edges a piece has?
Yeah. So yeah, each tile has has traits that indicate the edge joins. Um,
So here, the edges that are purple are potential joins, meaning you could
then
join another tile on that edge.
you can, but not any tile. One with the same joining traits. So if the composite builder does it for you, so it'll just show you all the tiles that will join onto that one with matching traits, and you see that the actual traits are determined by, I call these dragon bodies. Where they intersect the edge, it determines how it creates a trait to say this point there has to be another dragon body on this side that kind of
I see.
continues through here.
So, so in this case, if that bottom one, that blue one, if it only joined on the top left, these
Right.
two would not connect. Is that correct?
Sorry.
Like in this case, I'm wondering like the level of detail for the joining. So is it just like that this blue one has to be able to join on the top border, or is it specifically the top right border?
Oh, yeah, it has to be the top right border, but you can see there's other tiles here that have joining edges on these on other sides as well. So it might be more obvious if I
I'm saying, would there be a difference between like the top left border versus the top right border, or is it just the top border? Doesn't matter if it's left or right.
top left border.
Never mind. Never mind.
Right. You can see actually I've got this thing called like a joining map. So it just shows you where the dragons are joining.
I see.
You see this the dragon body is continuous through this part here. But many of the edges aren't joining edges, so the dragon bodies don't intersect at all. So to make a black or a white dragon, the rule is that all the internal edges have to be joining, and all the external edges have to be what I call closed. That is that there's no dragon body intersects them. So, so for instance, this one wouldn't be even if I put a tile in here, it wouldn't be valid because there's no dragon bodies that intersect this edge. You can see the joining edges because they're marked in purple.
Got it.
Yeah. We probably went in far. We started off at the deep end. We should have just kind of give a general. It might be interesting to know whoever's listening if they've already looked at the project or not. Can we ask them?
Yeah. Have you guys looked into it all, or what's your level of understanding? That probably gives a good starting point.
I've got a pretty. I've been following this for a while personally. So for me, I this all makes sense. I've been preparing for this for a while. So my only question I have is so basically, if I get a single piece, then there's going to be no purple borders around it at all. That's how I indicate it, and it would probably be reflected in the metadata as well. Correct? If it's a solo piece that you made in one tile.
Yeah. So to make a single piece of black dragon, it can't have any joining edges on that tile.
Yeah,
and they're not that uncommon. They're probably 1 in every 20 tiles is like that. So whoever gets those single black dragons are going to have to be pretty quick. Yeah, but it's automatic actually. I mean, the thing is, if you make a composite that qualifies for a black dragon and nobody's already used that configuration, you have to make a black dragon with it. If you like the tiles and you just add a blank to it and it will disqualify it, but it will be automatic. So when you same with white dragons, if you do manage, but you're not going to just find those more complicated black and white and the white dragons. You're not going to do it by accident.
Yeah,
it's just too difficult.
So can we see what the white ones look like? I've seen you show a bunch of examples of the black. I haven't really seen the white.
Yeah, I can I'll share my screen again. There's one. Probably got one in my. Probably got one in here somewhere. Oh, okay, there's a bunch. There's one. So, yeah, these two are valid white dragons. Yeah. That's the only two I've my current system has 5,000 tiles in, and that's the only one I could make. But then I didn't really spend that long doing it. Somebody I would imagine might end up writing a script so you could look at all the tiles or get all the metadata if first exposes an API, and then you'd be able to kind of get an exact number on how many are possible. And that would be the ideal. But I'm hoping somebody else will write that script rather than me.
And the mint ends when all of the pieces to configure the 50 or so black dragons have been minted. All of those tiles in the mint, is that when it ends?
So that was the original idea for quite some time, although but we've now scrapped that idea, and we're just opening the tile supplies is open for 500 hours now, and which is just under 3 weeks. And if the black dragons, white dragons get made, they do. If they don't, they don't. So we've got 3 weeks to try and make them. And I imagine that way, if the black and white dragons all get made, there's still a possibility that there could be some tile mints people that could create some interest in the project, and there could be some more kind of like people coming in, which I feel for the black and white dragon owners, like a bigger supply is not necessarily like a problem, because it like makes those very unique pieces even more special, and it brings more attention to the project. So I just like the idea of this simple kind of like, I think of it like a Petri dish, right? It's just you have this container, this 500-hour container, and just no conditions to see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Neil, do you feel the same? Like you've been following it as well, I bet.
Yeah, no, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum actually. Like this is my first exposure to Harvey's work. I know of Fontana, obviously. But yeah, I just came on just because I was curious. I haven't been following this project as closely, so I was just curious to see what was being spoken about. But it's super cool. The mechanic is like super interesting now that I'm kind of getting a feel of it. I was curious to see what happens once the window is closed and everyone has all these different pieces, and those people who haven't been able to create a dragon, for example. Is there any follow-on with those pieces that didn't really amount to anything?
Sure. So yeah, you can continue to make composites. So the black and the white dragons is one goal of the project, right? So there's two ways you can approach this project. You can just make composites, which you find beautiful. Just you can take the art approach, right, and just make things that you really like. Or you can do the full-on degen scarcity route of making black and white dragons, which, and you know, there's an intentional artistic trade-off in making those black and white dragons. The black and white dragons have no what we call spaces, so they're very intense. You know, the color, you have to sacrifice the colors of the tiles. So it's kind of, the project is kind of like this open question: what do we care more about, the scarcity or the art? Now, I actually feel like they're both important parts of the ecosystem. They're both valid approaches, and I think it'll probably be about 50-50 split in terms of what, you know, people get interested in. Or you can pursue both as well. You know, you can try and get a black dragon, but you can also end up with a bunch of tiles and just try to make, you know, a beautiful composite. And it might be, you know, we don't know what at the end of when all the tiles are converted to composites, and we don't know when that'll be. That might be in a year's time. Even people might collect a bunch of tiles and then they may hand them off to an artist to maybe make a composite for them. It may take time, but when that collection is finally, it might be that it's not a black and white dragon that becomes like the highest value piece. It might be an art piece. You know, who knows? It's part of, like, for me, I'm trying to make an experiment where nobody knows what's going to happen.
So you're kind of anticipating some people almost making it a collaborative effort amongst themselves to involve other artists into it as well, and just kind of make something.
Yeah, and I would love that. You know, obviously it makes a lot of sense from my perspective in terms of bringing more exposure to the project. There's also, I know there are groups of people who are tending to work more like, you know, take a DAO approach and buy a lot of tiles so they can try and get, you know. So yeah, there's lots of ways there has to be some collaboration between collectors to make, especially like the white dragons, probably, because if those centerpieces are going to be so scarce, and it might be that you have, say, you might have 8 of the 9 pieces needed to make a white dragon, but there's the certain corner piece that you need. And then, of course, everybody, you know, the community works out that you need it. So, you know, who's that person who owns it? Are they going to hold it? Are they going to do a deal with you? You know, what's the dynamic there? So, it's going to be interesting how it all unfolds. Or that person may not know, and they may just sell it without, you know, knowing that it's really something that's sought after by other people.
So real quick, like, so are these designed to be more of like puzzle pieces where they're, you know, this fits with this and this color palette fits with that color palette? Or is it more just to be really wide open so we can really have a lot of creative space to create emergent properties and the best possible art? I'm guessing it's more the latter, right?
You can do it both, and I'll share my screen again and show you
Yeah,
why.
I was gonna say, Harvey, maybe it would be good to just show some of the base pieces too, because I mean, each of these pieces alone are really nice. And like Harvey and I talked about this as he was thinking through the project, and you know, he really wanted to make sure that everything would stand by itself, right? Like you don't need a black dragon, you don't even need to make a composite. This composite builder is really flexible, so it makes it easy. Like you can add in spaces in the composites that you want to build. So there's certainly a lot of room for entertainment and engaging yourself and collecting, even without chasing like these more rare pieces. But maybe you could show some of that off, Harvey.
So yeah, I'm just making a few random composites here. So we have these things called blanks, which will join onto any tile. So you can have two tiles which don't naturally join, but you can still do, you still, like these tiles don't, well, they do join there, but that gives you a lot of artistic freedom about what you can try with these blanks. The blanks reveal elements of the tiles which are normally sort of like cropped off. So even like if I make this particular arrangement here, highlighting this tile, you'll see I'll get a certain output. It might be this, and then if I highlight this one, the composite will take the background colors from this one and also just arrange the elements differently. So just with two tiles, I can get quite a lot of variation. I could do even something like this. And I'm just making it, but you'll find once you start playing with the builder that you know, you can get quite good at kind of getting a sense for. I can't get that tile back now, but
are blanks sold as tiles too, or is that
no? They're free. They're just, anybody can use them as long as you've got one tile in a composite. It's valid. So you know you can add quite a few. There's a limit to how big the composite will be. This is the best. Well, this is as big as a composite can be. You can't make a composite with just nothing in it at all.
These blanks are really interesting. Like these are really adding a lot of creativity to the pieces. This is fantastic.
Yeah, that was the surprise when I when I gave you know, when people started using it, how creative they got with the blanks, and people were using them in ways that I'd never thought of, you know.
Could you do a composite of a composite? So like you make a composite and you stick it back into the builder.
I thought about that, but it became just technically very complex, especially because this whole thing has to be integrated with the Verse website. So no. So once, yeah. So, and also when you've got a composite, it's going to be very unlikely that it joins perfectly with another one because like the joining traits are just unlikely to match. So that wasn't, yeah, we didn't do that in the end. Another project maybe.
Are there any weird and interesting like outlier combinations that you can share with us?
Well, yeah. Well, I can tell which ones kind of like I found work well. I might just be able to. You know, a lot of the like composites don't have to have a lot of tiles to be successful. Like this one, for instance, has two tiles and a row of, like I tend to find things with sort of like if you put one tile on top of the other, whether they join or not, and then have a row of blanks either side, it usually comes up quite nice. This gives you can see this okay, right? This gives you an idea what you can do. So there's two tiles here, but you can do, obviously there's four composites here. This gives you an idea of how much sort of like freedom you can have just from two tiles. On my Discord channel, there's somebody posted one, and let me grab it. Somebody posted one which was quite unusual.
The multicolored ones are quite nice, actually.
Yeah, this hang on, let me just download this, save this.
And
Yeah, these
Harvey,
blanks just. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
no, please go ahead.
These blanks just give so much more ability to just create. This is like just so crazy. Like, I didn't realize how big of a creative space that was really being built here. I mean, this is just infinite what you can create.
Right. Yeah. So I want it to feel that way, like it is infinite, but it's the balance of the project is like trying to is create giving people creative freedom. Oh, this is the one that somebody posted this morning. It just looks like a bird face in the top here, but he just used the whole. Yeah, it's just one tile, whole bunch of blanks. He found one that just had this kind of symmetry to it. Looks like a. Oh, I see. It looks like a. He's called it a crow. His two eyes and a beak and a mouth. So yeah, the challenge of building a project like this is you want to give people as much creative freedom as possible, but you don't want them to be able to produce something that's really bad, right? So, I mean, the blank is a very simple thing, but like you say, it gives the feeling that actually, wow, there's so much possibility here, but without it's kind of difficult to come up with something that's like totally horrible, you know. I think with like if you go the parameter route, like you know QQL and stuff, it's much easier to come up with something that's kind of just boring or ugly. You also got the potential there to produce something that's really exceptional, but I think with this model, the composite model, it's more akin to. I'm thinking of it as more of an extension of the pairing model, right? Where collectors like to pair, they spend a lot of time, and this is kind of like an extension of that whole approach. So it's community co-curation as well as co-creation, I think.
Yeah, and Harvey, the mints are going to be $100, right? Like it's meant to be.
Yeah.
Or
so
what did you settle on?
It's because we got this 5 theme, we've got 500 hours, we've got 50 black dragons, 5 white dragons, we've got 0.05 ETH, which is just under $100 tile. Yeah, unless ETH goes through the roof, in which we'll just turn it back to $100. But we want it to be around $100. A little bit under $100, I think, is optimal. But which currently 0.05 ETH is whatever, $90 or whatever. Yeah.
Harvey, do you intend on expanding this? Because I've played around with FX hash params a lot, and it's not. I agree totally. It's like you've got to really put guardrails to make sure it's good art, and I think a lot of times in params stuff just comes out. You know, if you have too many params and all stuff, it doesn't come out right. So do you think this is something that you can, build for other artists? And I think this is really, to your point, the key thing you have to be guarding against, and I think you've really hit it with this. So do you think you're going to share with other artists?
Totally, yeah. This is as an artist, I think to do something like to really cement your status or like, I mean, I just want to innovate as an artist. I think it's my job as an artist to do something that has not been done before. And of course, it just makes total sense for me if other artists do composite projects after this, because it's going to elevate the status of this project. This is just looking at it, purely. So yeah, I'll open source what I've done, and I'll, maybe work with a couple of other artists to do a composite follow-up type project. I've got my own vision for where I want to take this as well, maybe I share that actually. So I had this dream in my mind, like it came to me like if about a month ago. It was like, I can see this, imagine this, walking into a museum, right, with your family, your kids, and there's a room full of tiles, hexagonal tiles with different colored edges, 6 different color, and you pick them up and you put them together on the floor on a table, and there's a camera in the ceiling that scans everything, and on the wall projects, or on a big screen makes a composite, merges these tiles together in real time. And then you and your family make a composite, and then you buy it there and then for $10, $20, and you get a real-time print, and you get an NFT if you want it. So this is like a touring installation, highly accessible, a lot of fun, and it's introducing people to this concept and Web3 at the same time. And to me, this feels really good. So this is where I want to take it. So the user interface becomes something in real life, physical. Maybe you pop up, we can go around New York City, go to the big cities, like have a big pie where people can make composites. And then, yeah, to answer your question, you could potentially, if you built like a protocol, you could have different artists making different works, and they could all be composited together. So you could have work from different artists in the same composite, which would be totally nuts, and there's no reason that wouldn't work technically. You just have to make sure you give all the right specifications for the way the algorithm has to be built. And
yeah, I think I mean, obviously I'm a little biased because Harvey and I have known each other for a while, and we've been talking about this project, but I really am excited for this because I think it's very much leaning into, this is kind of like an overused term, but like the network state, right? I mean, the way that people can interact with this feels unique. The fact that it's meant to be low cost, high supply, optimizes more for that interaction. And, it reminds me a little bit of like how terraforms, I don't know if you all have looked into terraforms, but the whole idea is that it's living art. And, you can actually terraform your piece and change it into whatever. I think params to the earlier conversation is also like sniffing around this concept of really like including the collector as part of the experience. But this is more than just the collector. It's trying to incentivize groups to come together to build things with composites, but you could do it by yourself too. And to that point, Harvey, I know you and we haven't talked in a bit, but maybe you obviously have time. You can decide if you want to do something like this, but maybe you can even try to incentivize people to work together on this stuff. Like, Tyler Hobbs, I think with QQL, he got a few big name artists together and had them be the parametric artist, roll whatever the outputs until they found a good one. And then I don't know if they auctioned those off or something like that. It was like, maybe it was with Venus over Manhattan or something like that. I can't remember, but there was something along those lines. And I know, you may want to consider keeping a bunch of mints for yourself for future activities. You can even do like a competition with different communities and say, hey, let's see who comes up with the best like composite. And there's like a prize for that. Perhaps Collector's Corner Premium would win, not to bias anything, but I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas out there and leaning more into the community aspect of it, because I think it's just a really cool way you've balanced both, right? Like you could be happy with buying one of these by yourself, but there is like a community element that easily flows through it.
Yeah. We certainly think about doing a competition in the 5 days leading up to the launch, just where people use the test composite builder to make on. I think the first day we just have a 1-tile composite and then 2-tile composite 3-day, on each day. And then I'll just pick my favorite, and we can although they'll be from using the test tiles, we can still mint it. So, and that person will just get a free composite, and that'll be the first 5 made.
Have you well, actually you go ahead, O'Neill. I have a question.
I was just going to quickly ask, is this on the composite builder, can one just pick from any tiles that's out there just to kind of like see what a composite looks like, whether they own it or not, and then go after the ones that they want?
Yeah, they can, and then they can also save the composites they make, so they can, even if they don't own those tiles, they can still save them, and so they can have an intent to maybe, and they'll have an offer button on them, or a buy now button, whatever the person who owns it, however they want to. So yeah. Otherwise, it's just like you're just playing with the 2 tiles or 3 tiles you own, and it's kind of like not such a fun experience. So yeah,
it's awesome.
And Harvey, how are you going to deal with prints? Have you thought about this?
Not much, just because we will offer prints in the same way I offer, but it's usually something that comes after, several months after. I'll integrate it into my print porthole, and this project, just because it's such a like a Web3 focused kind of like experiment, it's not, was never designed for print as such. Not like Cove High, for instance, which is a print first project, you know. So, but there will be prints available for the composite holders, yeah.
Well, I've
prints
just
are
thought
always
of
a
it.
pain in the ass to make. They take up a
No,
lot.
I know, right? It makes you appreciate the
Yeah.
Web3 art side, the digital only. But I see your vellum back there, in the background right now, and it just strikes me that if people really like this, they may want to get prints. I don't know if there's like a way to get like lower cost prints, or in some way where you don't have to really like deal with it at all. But they wouldn't be signed, or I don't know.
Oh, so
But
with this project, if you own the composite, then you have the full IP, the artwork IP. So you can do anything with that. You can turn it into you can use it as a logo for your business or do whatever you want with it, right? So, and then with that, there'll be a way to download high-res file of your composite. I've built that on my test version. I don't think we have that running on Verse yet. So you can either get it printed yourself, or like you say, for this project, maybe it'd be better suited to have just a low cost. People can just get something cheap, and then if they want something really bespoke, they can download a high res file of the composite from the site. Yeah, because dealing with prints just until I have enough flow that I can pay someone just to take care of it all the time. I've tried to kind of like, I mean, I've got a system set with Tribeca who takes care of all my prints at the moment, but it still involves some messing around.
So I got a print for a collection called September from FX Hash by nice. Tyler Boswell, and they were, I think, like $30 or $40, and they were just, they were much smaller. There was like almost maybe slightly larger than like regular paper, right? Whatever that is, 8x11. Right. So a little bit bigger than that, but I don't know. It's just something to consider, right? If you're going with the theme of trying to expose more people to generative art and making it more accessible with a really nice art at a low price point, then just a thought, because it is nice to have it, and it might be something that comes up. I don't know what kind of demand there will be.
Right. Yeah. Certainly, if with this type of thing, if there's a good demand, then I'll provide it. Sometimes it takes me a little while though.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a lot going on. I'm sure you've been working super hard on this. So, okay, sorry, one random question that's in the back of my mind. So let's say, Toth, he's minting like right when it opens, and he gets one of those tiles, that's an instant Black Dragon, right? Because there's, I think, 5 or 6 tiles where if you get the right configuration where there's no joining edges, that is eligible to be a Black Dragon. Right. You can also do whatever you want with it, make a composite with something else, or not make a composite, maybe just make some blanks. But how do you actually lock it in so you are the Black Dragon holder? Do you have to do anything, or does it just like happen?
It's automatic. The first one of each composite type will be automatic. You have no choice. So if you didn't want to mint it as a Black Dragon for any reason, you would just have to either wait until somebody else mints that composite configuration or add a blank to it or something. So
the start of this mint is going to be like a gas war. If people like understand this. Because you could get 50,
I mean, it depends on how much we think the Black Dragon single ones will be worth, I guess. I don't know. So
I mean, I'm sure it'd be worth, I guess it's hard to
50.
say.
Yeah, it's only 50. So
is there a way
I think this is going to do really well. And I think this, especially hearing Harvey's vision, like I think this is going to be the best. This is by far the best example of co-creation we've seen in the space. I think this is going to be really, really valuable. And it's great because it's accessible. It's not like QQL where you had to spend 10 on an impact, I think this is going to kill it. I got to run, guys, to a meeting, but thank you so much, Harvey, for taking the time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it, guys. Take care. Have a great day, guys.
You too. Thank you. Okay. P, you still there?
Yeah, I thought maybe O'Neill had a question, so I was muted.
Sorry. I was just, let's say if there's 10 Black Dragons out there, How would one know that one of those black dragons were just made out of one tile versus multiple composites?
Oh, okay. So it will be in the traits. Yeah,
Okay.
you're right. It's a good question because it may not be easy to see because they're so densely packed in. But all composites have traits, and one of those traits is like number of tiles and also a configure. Well, it's a configuration ID which shows you what types of tiles are in there. So yeah, you can tell that way.
That's cool. So someone could go out sorting and just kind of look at the ones that are
Well, in
single
the
tiles.
composite builder, you can see which one. There's also in that list of all the ones available, they get blacked out when they,
Okay.
when they get minted. So it's easy to see, what's already been, what ones to aim for. Yeah.
Yeah. What's been great about this is just from me discovering now the dynamics of it is that just looking at the tiles before they turn into a composite to when they turn into a composite is such a nice shift, essentially.
Right.
The way it puts it together, it just comes together really nicely. And that's kind of something I didn't expect just looking at initially. I just looked at the tiles and I thought, okay, those are the ones that literally get put together. But the way this kind of comes together in the build up and the output, it's nice. It's really nice.
Thanks. Yeah, it was actually the blanks. The addition of the blanks was kind of like I didn't design that in originally, but it was kind of like a bug. Yeah, I was when I was working on building the composite builder, it was like I had a tile which didn't have a hash associated to it. I opened it up and it just allowed the tile next to it to expand. So it was just a kind of happy accident. But that's how art is made, right? Often the best kind of like discoveries you make in the process is not something that you plan. It's just a happy accident. So
yeah, the blanks are great. The blanks are a great addition.
People seem to really like and get them. Yeah, I was quite excited when I found them.
Oh, they look awesome, man. And I guess like echoing O'Neill, you wouldn't think like, okay, I shouldn't put words in his mouth, but like I think this is what he's saying. From my standpoint, you see, like a green and a purple, and I'm like, if I put these together, how is this gonna look good? But your pattern system and your design system, they look really nice fused, and it just wouldn't. Even that one that you showed us, the Raven one or whatever, it was kind of like colors that I wouldn't have thought worked together, but it worked.
Yeah, so there is quite a limited color space to the whole project. Again, it's generative color, so every tile is slightly different to the next one. But that particular model I found from just refining. I mean, it's refined from the Fontana model actually. So, but it just, I could have had more color variety in the project in a whole. But then every time you introduce more for variety, you have the more possibility of things going wrong or being clashing. So it's like the way I think about this particular project in terms of color is like if you ever sound a piano, just hit the black keys, right? Whatever you do, it sounds harmonious. It doesn't sound discordant. And similar to that, I've had to kind of limit it in a way that they all work. This whole project's about kind of constraint and limitation, like all the geometry. It's so geometrically constrained, and that's what enables it to be tiled. If you had things that were more loose, you would just get some crazy discordant outputs.
And how many base? I mean, you must have designed this algorithm to be like 10,000 plus base pieces.
That would be. I would love it if it ever got, if it did get to that much. I mean, it could be more. I think at that point, it just becomes, it's primarily about building a strong, broad community. And so it doesn't matter if it's 5 or 10 or even 20,000, right? It's better the bigger, because I think actually it elevates those rare pieces at the top as well. The bigger the general supply, the rarer actually those 55 special pieces become. I think. I don't know.
No, certainly. But I guess I just mean from the standpoint of the generative algorithm,
Oh,
Like,
yeah, you don't. I don't ever. I don't think any artist does really sort of does set out to design an algorithm for a certain supply. You design the algorithm and then you look at it and think, well, what is this good for? You know, as long as it's still producing surprises. Of course, with this, you've got because got the composite builder. You've got the advantage that you've got the collector community who are going to really explore the outliers, right? And I think of it a bit like this is an extension of just using randomness, right? Randomness is a way of exploring possibilities within a certain range. I don't actually feel it's a way of giving up control. It's a way of it's a powerful tool you can use to explore the realm of possibilities within the constraints you make. Now, a community is even more powerful randomness because it comes up with, like, everybody has their own kind of like visual likes, and they come up with the peculiarities, which is really difficult to find you do find with randomness, but you have to iterate more. So community co-creation to me is just like, it's the perfect randomness. It's the most varied. You're getting a condensed randomness, kind of like a more interesting randomness.
yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like the artist's job here is, to your point, to constrain the randomness.
Yeah.
In this. So that's super interesting. Did we already talk about the part where you can have like a tile swapper?
So inverse, yeah. So the tiles are not on chain, so they live in the verse ecosystem, and you just, they are in your account, so you can trade them without any gas. You can kind of swap them, I guess. I mean, because you can make it, you'd have to. I don't know if we actually have a swap tool built yet, but because there's no gas, it's pretty easy to move them around. But you can only do that within the verse ecosystem. But then once you make a composite, that's a fully baked NFT that can live anywhere on the.
And can you mint like let's say I have a base piece that I really like and I don't want to turn into a composite. Can I mint that as an NFT? Then, whatever, draw it to my wallet and all that.
Totally. Yeah. You can add a blank to it, or you can just leave it as it is and just, mint it to the composite collection. Yeah.
Once that happens, can it become a composite, or at that point it can never be a composite?
It never be so the original verse tile will be burned, and then that will be this composite tile. Let's call it a composite tile. It's you can't use it you can't use that again then.
Okay. Are there any colors that are more or less rare than others? Like, I know there's rarity on the joins, like how many edges the piece joins on, but and I know it's also generative color. I'm talking high level. Like,
Really?
I know everything is a little bit of a different color, but like, are the blues or the purples, or just throwing out random ones? Or does your algorithm not really work that way?
I'm just thinking. Yeah, so probably you find like there are some. I think the turquoise, the teals always be popular. There's a nice deep teal that seems to be really rare, which I really like. And I'm not even sure myself why that doesn't come along very often. It's a fairly even spread throughout the sort of the range that are possible. You do sometimes get some interesting. There are two types of tile, actually, that is something I've never even explained, but people haven't even noticed it. There's ones with a solid color background, which also, like the fans, I call them fans, are the kind of things that fan out from the background. And if the background is solid, then they are that each fan is a different color. No, they're all a solid color. But then you have backgrounds which are either white or sort of like dark or light, and then the fans are different. Each segment is a different color. No, I don't think. I mean, I think maybe composites, which I don't. It'd be interesting to see if people try to make composites all of the same. I guess it depends on your personal taste, right?
Well, and this is where I think, to your point about community discovery, randomness.
Yeah.
Like I think about friendship bracelets. and people sort of started gravitating to certain traits. Like some of them are figure eights, just randomly. Some of them have like a triangle and then a circle inside of it.
Right.
Those are trading for a significant premium. They're calling those the Illuminati ones. And so, like,
Right.
I these things happen that people latch on to things that you weren't even intending. So,
Right. Yeah. I think we had a whole show about it, right? Community emergent traits. Yeah. So originally the project had black and white dragon tiles, right? That was one of the first ideas. But in the end, I removed that because it just seemed like to me, it felt like a kind of a cheap trick, because people will obviously just be minting just to get them, and it kind of devalued the project for me. I wanted to get the rare thing. I feel like you have to do work. You have to, like, you've got to read the docs. You've got to understand the join system. You've got to abide by certain rules. You've got to work to get the rare thing. It just, I mean, I want people. There's still, you can still mint a centerpiece, so there's luck there. But I didn't want the project just to be this kind of a simplistic kind of race just to get these black dragon tiles or white dragon tiles. I wanted it to be more of a everything had to be built, either the art or the rarity. So it's adding a little bit more nuance to it, maybe. But there might be a cost to that. I mean, maybe there won't be such a mad rush, but I don't care. It's just the fact that I don't. It seems like any outcome to this project will be good from my perspective, because I'll learn something from it and be able to build upon it, and it'll be, I think, the community will learn something, hopefully, from, we'll see this has not been done before, and it'll tell us something about the community dynamics. So
yeah, I think it'll be what you just described there. That's your intent with it, and I think having like authenticity in your intent as an artist is important, because then you'll have your best work and people pick up on it. And I think what you're saying makes sense, right? That people should have to do work to get, that's the intent. And I think there's also like this weird psychology where if you have to work for something, you end up liking it more. It's almost like cognitive dissonance, where you can't, it's too painful to think that you spent a bunch of work on something that was worthless. I mean, it happens all the time, right? Like, we don't really like that. So better to trick yourself into thinking that it's actually really worthwhile. Not saying it's not, but it's like this weird phenomenon that happens. I'm just saying in this case, but like I see this with other projects. Like if you take the time to understand gazers, like, I don't know, you kind of feel like you have an edge, and it's like interesting knowledge. Same with some of these other ones like terraforms, and this is like, or like wolf game. Like I still don't know what that's about, but people really love wolf game. So I think that is certainly something that will emerge. So okay, that's really cool to hear. I don't know if T or Josh heard this, but apparently there's a DAO that might really try to go after some of these more rare. Wait, so, and I'm sorry, I missed it, Harvey. The white dragon, how do you get a white dragon? Is it also just another configuration?
Yeah, so let me share my screen again.
And did you show some of them?
I showed one, I think, unless it didn't come up on my. You see the composite builder, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there's one actually in the docs. Let's scroll down. So these are the white dragon configurations. You see, they all have a center tile. Okay. At least one. These two have two center tiles. So these two are going to be so difficult to make. So but I wanted two which were almost impossible, because then, if the project closes 500 hours, these are all made. These three are made, let's say, or this one. We then have these possibilities, and then we could ask the community, okay, do we want to have like an auction or some giveaway for a bunch of these middle tiles, so these then become makeable? It's just something that we could potentially have some fun with at some point in the future. But that would all be depends on the, I'd always ask the community if that's is something they want to do, or they just want to keep it closed. At that point, the community owns the project. So, so yeah, that's a white tile, and that's the tiles that made it. You see, but so the Black Dragon set, basically, it's just all within the size constraint of the composite builder. It's just all the possible tiles that are all the same tile, all the same aspect ratio, that will fit into that size, and it comes out at 50. And then apart from the ones with the middle tiles, which is separated into a separate group.
Awesome.
And there's a Black Dragon there.
Very cool. And you said you're going to open up the composite builder site. Is it open now, or is it?
It's open. Yeah, I can post the link in the discussion here. It says there's 6 participants. Has anybody else got any questions? Or are you just seeing 2 there, or 1?
No, there's the 2 of us and 4 others. People might be at work though. I'm not sure. They're just kind of listening passively. Hey, Sean. Oh, so I think someone unmuted. Oh, maybe not. But
Right.
yeah, driving and at work. So there you go.
Chat. I'm now posting the link to the composite builder in the chat. So this is my test version. It's not the live verse version. They're still ironing out a few bugs on their end, but that will be up and running in the next few days. But I think, like I said, I think I'm going to open source this code just so other people can build similar. I mean, I think it only helps Quasi Dragon if the more people experiment with this form down the road, the more Quasi Dragon hopefully will be seen as a first in a new subspace,
Yeah. And Harvey, it's just really more my curiosity. How has it been with you, sort of to some extent, co-creating this with the community? I know you started up your Discord and you've been getting a lot of feedback and ideas directly on Discord rather than just Twitter. Like, how's that experience been for you?
It's been awesome. I mean, I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I haven't worked for 25 years in isolation without any audience. I've tried that approach, didn't get me anywhere. So this is like I've gone almost like 180-degree turn, and now I try to get the community, the small community who follows me like regularly. I try to like run all my ideas past them, probably to a fault. As I think about stuff, sometimes I'll just go on Discord and start thinking out loud, share my ideas, and to see what the feedback is. Sometimes people have a really good, they'll push back, or they have a really good other suggestion. Sometimes me just explaining my thoughts helps me realize, okay, I didn't understand that, or it helps me find better language to talk about it. And part of the biggest challenge with this project is just finding the language to talk about, come up with the term open and closed edge. I mean, it's still not right, I don't think, but like all these different, like tile and composite, all these words, it's difficult. It took a long time to arrive at the right way to talk about the project. And the only way you can do that is through practice and talking to people. So that's one benefit. And I just feel like people feel like they're more part of the journey. They're more included. And this is something I just want to really double down on after this project. One of my frustrations is that, I only really have Twitter and Discord to reach an audience. I think it's a lot of, I mean, yeah, you could go on Instagram and stuff, but a lot of collectors aren't there. So I'm thinking I'm going to I've got a guy who does a lot of filming. He interviewed me in the past. He's going to come and start just following my creative process every other week. And we're going to start putting some videos up every other week. I don't want to be a YouTuber, but I do want to document my way of thinking, my way of work, and follow my progress when I have my studio built and stuff. So,
this might be too extreme for you, but you could also consider a Twitch stream. There's the guy who started Math Castles. I don't know his real name. He goes by like 113.
right.
He does this, like,
Oh,
people
really?
Discord, and he literally streams himself like coding. And I don't know if he talks to them. Like, I don't know if you need to. Maybe.
Yeah, he talks. He talks.
Oh, okay. You've seen some of his stuff?
Yeah, he also started this coding university within the Discord itself, where you just invite community members to come in and just, teach them how to code. And all of a sudden it was and like a weekly session essentially, where you just kind of get better at coding and you share each other's like work and stuff like that. Super cool.
Yeah, I've never even looked at Twitch, but I've just put it in my notes. On my one thing I do really enjoy is like doing critiques with other artists, and especially if they've because I've been doing this a long time. I'm not saying I'm better or worse than anybody else, but I've been through the process of being stuck so many times that I feel like I'm quite good at getting out of it, and encouraging artists to kind of be brave. Like there's something weird, right? With generative art, you can just make a copy of your code, and you can then just hack it and do whatever you want. But there's something very sort of you get very precious about what you made, and it's a kind of like a barrier that comes up. Like I just daren't. So it takes a lot of courage to be able to start again on a project or rebuild something in a sort of a really radical way, even though you've got a copy of the code. So I really like working with artists who are just starting up, who have built something, and really just to try and get it to the next level. Just encourage them to kind of take that leap and try something maybe they wouldn't normally have done. So I don't know if I'd want to teach people code and such, but I would like to do something like that where I was more of an art focused type thing. Just kind of getting the energy up and kind of encouraging people, even if they're not even if they're not artists, if they just want to do something creative in their life. I've always enjoyed being more like a cheerleader. This might be a digression, P, but it was always when we moved to America, we always had this vision of, we bought some properties in a row, and we always wanted to create this place where people could come and be we built a ceramic studio and stuff where people could come and just explore creativity in a really sort of free, safe way without having to make great art or anything, but just getting their hands dirty. And I've still sort of have that vision of trying to, help other people feel more creative. And it's partly what the QDS project's about. I built this project called Pattern Cooler years ago, where people just made background patterns and changed colors and stuff, and people really appreciated that. And I got a big kick out of the whole project. So yeah.
Yeah, I think as a collector as well, sometimes just knowing the process of the artist is just such a exhilarating thing sometimes, and it kind of makes you, just love the piece even more in a different way. It's just when you're listening to music and you an artist, and then all of a sudden you go into YouTube and you're looking at their studio sessions, it's just brings a whole new context. So
right, yeah,
it's kind of something similar. It's quite cool to be able to see your process. Would be nice.
Yeah, I totally agree. When I think about the people I watch on YouTube on a regular basis, it's not that, it gets to a point where you just feel like them as a human, right? And they're you get comfort from seeing them every day, even if their content maybe one day is not that great. It's just nice to connect and learn a little bit more about them as a person. I think fundamentally, as humans, we like people and we like community. These are such strong drivers, so often everything else is just an excuse to connect with people and feel a sense of belonging. And the more you can do that, I think the better. And having not done it for 25 years, I've got a lot catching up to do.
Well, and I think this is something that's kind of unique in Web3 too, or it's that's kind of the point, in my opinion,
Yeah.
of like what's different between Web2 and Web3. I think pulling down some of these barriers, pulling down the need for a middleman, like I think that's a point. Things seem to be trending that way too, not just for artists, but any kind of like personality, in general.
Yeah. I think in 20 years' time, when we look back at this from an art context, the really big revolution that we'll see happen and beginning to happen now the introduction of Gen Art as a new medium, that will be a significant turning point, but it won't be the thing that people are most interested in. So the thing that will be interesting is how people's behavior has changed, how like the whole dynamic with the collectors and the artists, where that, like you say, where that boundary is blurred. That will be the really interesting thing, or the thing that we'll look back and think, wow, that was the big revolution, right? Because there's no parallel to it in the traditional art world. Like, collectors and artists don't generally speak at all. Sometimes they'll find, they'll make a good friendship, but it's usually it's deliberately, everything is deliberately kind of opaque, and different people are kept away from each other. Like a gallery will mediate between an artist and collector, and I don't know. That's the bit I'm really excited about.
Yeah, well, I'm actually curious. Sorry, and I know like we're running a little over here, so we can stop whenever. But like, when I talk about X copy, I say he's sort of like the Banksy of like digital art, right? Kind of controversial, well, not controversial, but like his art is about topics that are culturally relevant, maybe a little controversial, whatever. Has a distinct style, but I don't know how it is with Banksy. Like, does anybody ever hear from Banksy, or does he ever talk to collect? Like, I think he just leaves stuff anonymously,
Yeah,
right?
he's still anonymous, but part of that was because of his medium right required it, because he was breaking the law by putting these. He could get sued, so and that was part of the culture of that street art, kind of, to be anonymous in that way.
Yeah, but
And then it became part of his enigma, right? So
right, but it's just interesting because, like, I mean, so it's clearly not a perfect analogy of what Xcopy is doing. His images are not illegal, but it's like, even though he's anonymous, he's so much more connected with his followers. I mean, I don't know how often he comes and talks and types or whatever, but he has such a huge presence in the following and a community that's formed like that. And it just, I don't know, my mind went to that parallel between Web3 and kind of like traditional art, and how even in I'm the super anonymous, nobody knows who I am type of person, still has a way to connect with their community that's just really not possible for someone like Banksy.
Yeah. Well, if you think about, like, think of Damien Hirst or David Hockney or something like, or Jeff Koons or something like, they don't really have or even need a strong social presence. They don't. I mean, they may have people that put tweets out for them, whatever, but they don't tend to have big social followings, because they have the way they collect. They actually have quite a small number of very dedicated collectors who they may have some kind of little bit of a relationship, but it's usually through a gallery. But they don't need like thousands of collectors. It's just not on. They just want these very kind of unique, these very sort of like it's kind of like an old school network, but they're sustained by that. They don't need to go out on social and kind of expand their audience in any way. That happens through normal just being on the BBC or whatever.
So it's like a few wealthy clients that sustain.
Well, they have to be wealthy, right?
Well, of course,
the work is just insanely expensive. But I mean, maybe Hearst is a little bit of an exception, just because he has participated in the whole, with his NFT currency project, and now this, I can't remember his name, the Chinese guy, Mi Mong, whatever. Like, that could be quite big for the space, I think.
The release that just came out with the
Yeah,
faces.
it was like these kind of like,
Mincha?
yeah. I mean, he's one of he's in the top 5 probably most prominent artists in the world.
Wow.
So it's
I think people just don't know. All right, we gotta buy that Onu.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
If I was a collector, I would be buying them.
I was
Well, it's hard
I was
to
on the white
know.
list. I didn't buy.
Yeah, right. He's an interesting artist. It'd be interesting to see, like in 5 years' time, whether these big, whether Hearst, if like Jeff Koons does one and stuff, what the value of their projects are, whether they'll be actually way below the digital native artists. I suspect they might be. They've
I mean,
had
you look at Murakami. You
yeah,
look at Murakami. His drop is quite like it's not doing well.
yeah. They've had their day, right? They've had their day. They've got their market that works for them, but it doesn't necessarily translate.
Well, but and to your point, if a disproportionate percentage of their revenue comes from a small number of people, and this is a different audience, then it may not translate the same way.
Yeah.
Like
And the work may not just even be interesting. I think Currency was quite interesting in a way, but some of the established artists who've done drops, they're not necessarily, they're coming new to the space, so they're not immersed in it. They don't understand they don't have an insight into maybe the sort of insight you would need to do something actually interesting and new. So it might be a little bit dull. They might think from their perspective it's quite exciting. Oh, they're part of this new thing, right? But what they're doing in Web3 is pretty boring. But there's, yeah.
I feel the fabric of Web3 just automatically brings in this unrefined collector base on the whole, who are just there to trade most of the time.
Right.
So, and there's obviously there's a smaller contingency of people who are refined collectors and who really get behind artists here, I feel personally anyway. So I'm curious to see in your interactions with a lot of collectors, how many of these people tend to give you like questions or just kind of get in your sphere asking you more about trying to see if they're pumping bags versus people who are actually into the art.
Okay, yeah, it's a mixed bag. There are like the people who are really who really deeply kind of like care about art, like think, live and breathe it, and read. Those people tend to stick around a lot, and I'll develop close relationships with them. And they're the sort of people that, because I'm interested, I love arts, but they're the people that will naturally form a friendship with and have a long-term discussion with. But you do also get a lot of, people who are just trying to make, get some alpha, pump your bags and whatever. Like that, you get both. But I mean, I'll talk to anyone, just because they're all part of the ecosystem. It doesn't work if you take a certain group out, really. So, but it's quite rare. I don't get annoyed by collectors, whoever they are, right? I mean, they're collectors. They're supporting me. Why would I get? But from an artist perspective, the thing that I find sometimes is annoying is like I get approached by a lot of startups or like people who are building platforms, and they're often from tech world. They often have no sort of insight into art at all, and their thing is usually like, hey, come and drop with us and we'll give you exposure to our non-existent collector base. And well, this is what they're really saying, and you can bring your collector base and we can take half your profits. They offer you nothing. And they have no insight into art. They're not like, if you think of what Verse is giving me right now, right? They give me like 7 techies for 2 months, right? They gave me, exposure to all sorts of, art world curators. They gave me this huge show in London. They have a marketing team. They give me so much sort of support as an artist, the sort of things I can't do. And yet some of these pop-ups just come up and they're like, and they have no interest in what an artist needs or wants as in terms of support as building an interesting project. It feels very extractive, but then they're probably not going to go, they won't get anywhere, so they'll spend their X on building their little platform, but it won't go anywhere and it's like it's daily. But
I can imagine.
yeah, but it's still nice to be asked to participate in something, I guess. It's better than not have anybody wanting a piece of.
I think that's the kind of the yin and the yang of Web3.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you want direct access. Like I guess this is what some of the stuff
trade-off, right?
middlemen are good for, is dealing with that, and to some extent, like a newer industry. Josh had a question for you. He said, "What do the 7 tech resources from Verse help you with?"
So I built the composite builder, and then they took the composite builder and put it on that platform and integrated it with their secondary market system, the tile buying process, the whole mechanism for buying and selling, minting the composites. So they built that kind of middle piece of that middleware between the composite builder and their system they have at the moment. But the actual composite builder is still my code. That all the tiles are displayed in their own kind of like standard system, but most of the actual builder is still my code. But it's a tricky process whenever you're trying to combine 2 chunks of complicated code together. And especially for me, because I've always worked alone. I've always been a freelancer. I've always built projects alone. So I don't necessarily write code in the way I didn't think I did. Wasn't sure whether I was kind of a little bit nervous about handing my code over, thinking, well, I try to make it as clear and as kind of like easy for them to integrate as possible. But it was unknown, I didn't quite know how it would go, but in the end it worked pretty well.
Can I ask something about just in terms of your aesthetic? Would you call this your signature aesthetic, or do you also behind the scenes work on some like totally different aesthetics and artwork?
Well, if you go on my site, you'll see quite a diverse body of work, but I would say this is the first long-form generative project I've done, which actually draws on the geometric meterwork, which I worked on for like the first 15 years of my artistic kind of output. I wouldn't say career because I wasn't selling anything. And then when I started making generative art about 10, 12 years ago, I started to explore a whole different kind of visual language. I started to develop tools to explore things like quasi crystals. I started exploring waveform functions and stuff, so Photon's Dream, the first project I've done, Art Blocks, was like that type of work, and then Fontana was a little bit drawn on the more geometric constrained stuff I'd done, but this is like actually the motif behind Quasi Dragon. I actually developed that probably like 12, 15 years ago. And if you go on my site and just look at the gallery, you'll see examples of it. Back then, I called it Manjushrie's. What do they call it now? Shapes of Manjushri. That was the name of the project. You can see it linked at the top. And then I took that motif and then I turned it into this long form project. But I hope I don't have obviously I'm going to have. If you look at all my work together, you're going to see, okay, that all looks like Harvey Rayner, but I hope there's a lot of diversity in that, and I don't want to have a signature style as such. Each project I'm going to try and reinvent myself. I think that's what the artist has to do. When I look at someone like David Hockney or Picasso, the artists that really constantly reinvent themselves are the artists that I find really inspiring. And it's difficult, because you get attached to what you do and you kind of get in a groove and what certain things going to sell. But I don't want to do that. If you look at the other project, I've got a project called Cove Hive, which is very organic and textural. It's quite different to this, but it's a totally different approach to selling. I'm not even really trying to sell that to Web3 at the moment. It's just for I'm trying to use that as a way to get a little bit more access into the traditional art world. But so there's one thing actually I should share with this, maybe I already said this. There's a natural three-dimensional extension of this geometry, which, you know, so next year I want to build a sculpture project around as this is a base, but it will look very different. It's not like, well, for a start, sculpture, but the way when you extend the geometry into 3 dimensions, you know, you can see a vague connection there. But so and that will be the next kind of like there'll be a connection, and there'll also be some, I don't know if I said this already, but there'll be some for people who hold black and white dragons. There'll be some perks, some access to that project. But
I just answered the question I had.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of kind of continuing versions of projects and given access to earlier, you know. I still intend to do that with Vellum. You know, the Vellum's only one of 4 movements. I want to do one a year. So early next year, I want to do another. Well, some point next year, I want to do another Vellum. But again, but each Vellum has to be not completely different to the first one, but you know, but then given access to the holders, you know, a big discount to the next series.
I love the idea of going to sculpture, like going into physicals is, yeah, I love physicals. So
yeah,
I think the idea of merging Web3 with physicals is great.
It seems like it's really an unexplored. I mean, there are some people just kind of like starting to explore it, but I've always built stuff, you know, I've built houses and all sorts of things. So it's the obvious thing for me to do, really. I've just got to get a decent studio built first. So we get some good.
I mean, I think it's a really cool space. All I've really seen is generative art applied to like clothing or like textiles, rugs. I've seen there's been only very few. There's only been a couple of these things, but I think it makes a ton of sense. I could really see this proliferating, and this concept of one of N. I mean, you know, everyone talks about like you don't want to live in a cookie cutter house with like a neighborhood, right? And this is probably not the best analogy. Like you want to be in a neighborhood where the houses are somewhat unique and you can pick one that's more to your style. But probably from a manufacturing standpoint, right, it makes a lot more sense to have like the same components, the same parts, etc. And that's why you get the cookie cutter houses. They're cheaper to make it that way. But I don't know, maybe there's some in between if you had like a generative system. This is a stretch of an analogy, but that's where my mind goes. It's like, you know, there's some practical uses of generative systems, and we're using them from art, but maybe there's a way to combine the two, especially when you think about the physical.
I don't know if you've seen this collection, P, but there's an on-chain. I'll find it and I'll actually put a link in the Discord. But I saw this about a year ago. It's an on-chain project where they bought a plot of land somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, and there's like 500 LED lights or something like that, and they're all connected to the NFT that people bought. And you can basically change the intensity of the light, and that actually kind of reflects in the physical piece out in the middle of nowhere, and there's a camera facing it. And there's this like, it just does this stuff based on what everyone's doing collectively. It's an amazing collection. I'll have to share that link. I've got it in my bookmarks and I'll just go diving. But it's cool, like dynamic, generative, physical art like that. Crazy.
Can you see it from space? I guess you probably can, right?
Yeah, it's just basically it's the top of someone's rooftop or something like that, and they've just
okay, right.
No, it's like a concrete brutalist kind of place in the middle of the desert somewhere, and they just have like these massive LED like little just lights going out, and yeah, it's super interesting.
Right. Sounds like something that would work well at Martha.
Well, also, what's his face? He did art blocks. Leo Villarreal. He's done something like this, I think, with a generative light fixture, but not as interactive as you described, O'Neill, where the holders of NFTs can, you know, change the lights based on whatever. Maybe you scan it and it changes the light to like your NFT configuration or something. That's really cool. Yeah, and I mean, it kind of goes back to this earlier conversation about like interactivity with collectors and really bringing them into the mix. I mean, some of this is unlocked by virtue of having digital ownership, and like, you know, you can verify digital ownership like that. that opens up some of these like experiences that, you know, it's not just I guess it's not even just the aesthetic. There's just different. I've been thinking about this. There's different ways in which the Web3 art world enables new experiences for both collectors and artists on different categories that are somewhat tangential. But it's really cool to see, like, as a whole.
Can I ask something about physicals and just kind of the relationship with NFTs that unlock physicals? Do you see those two as separate categories, as like the NFTs being their own kind of thing and not necessarily attached to the physical? Or do you like the pairing aspect of them and them always living as a pair together? And how do you control them being a pair, essentially? Because I know there's some artists in this space who've come in and they've dropped prints, but they want you to hold on to the NFT associated with the print, but you can't really control that.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just interested in how you see that developing.
I think it depends on the project. So, like the Co 5 project I've got right now, yeah, it's each print's got an NFC chip on it. So the only way to get the NFT is to buy the print, and then if you sell the print, then the NFT just will go with it. As well as, I guess, if you remove the chip, it wouldn't. But it wouldn't really make sense because the NFT is just like, it's not even it's just a certificate of ownership, really. But yeah, it really just depends on the process. It's difficult to really kind of like, I don't think that nobody's found a good solution for really locking the two together, right? And in a way, maybe they never will, because the art world has been trying to find a way to kind of authenticate art for such a long time and not found a solution. NFT might be the best way so far, but then keeping them together, I don't know. Maybe somebody will do that with the retina or something, you know, like biometrics. I don't know, but it'd be nice if you could sort of like, you know, tie them together in a way that would be really difficult to separate them.
You have to take a drop of blood and it checks your DNA.
Yeah.
Even that, you know,
you could have a chip. You could have the NFT chip embedded in your head or something.
We'd have clones by then.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's interesting, right? Like trying to recreate the same experience in the, like, we're trying to recreate the digital experience for physicals in this case. So it's like, how do you make that happen? And 9DCC does this by, you know, the physical is the NFT, right? So if you lose the physical, then like, whoever holds the physical can claim the NFT on the blockchain. So in that way, the physical ends up being the part that really matters.
What happens when if that person then sells the physical? How does he tie it to the NFT?
Well, if you have like with a hat, let's say, for example, and you just you tap it with your phone, you can
the NFC chip, right?
Yeah, so there's a chip embedded in the physical product.
Right.
But you know, that doesn't help you if somebody steals your hat, then it's theirs now, right? So it doesn't help in that way, and give you that kind of like security.
Right. So it's still like an NFC. Yeah.
So I'm sure somebody will. There's probably not a perfect solution, but I'm excited to see more experiences come up. Like to me, the category is essentially, hey, what experiences are now possible if your transaction times are in seconds instead of days? Like that's what we're starting to unlock and think through, or at least that's one of the categories in which we're getting new experiences.
Yeah, there certainly seems to be a trend back towards maybe bespoke physicals, bespoke clothing, the whole trend with the plotter, right? I mean, that was an obsolete piece of technology pretty much. Everything comes in cycles, you know.
Well, yeah, you're right. And I mean, another like a term in healthcare that's come up a lot recently is personalization, right? It's like another way to phrase it. But people want unique things. In the healthcare standpoint, the idea is the more unique the healthcare is to you, the better the outcome will be.
Mm.
And so I think it makes sense. I mean, this is a big unlock for me with generative art, right? That they're all unique. Like I still don't value editions nearly as highly. I probably undervalue editions because of,
Ironically, like 15 years ago when I first started, like when I built that pattern software where people can get colored patterns and adjust the colors and the size and stuff, I started doing freelance work for startups who were like making custom prints on products. So like I worked with one company in Shanghai who made dresses, and they wanted people to be able to design their own dresses and change patterns and stuff. So all those startups I work with, none of those projects came to anything. I don't think the time was quite right, because back then, like it took so much. What we found with the fashion thing back then was that the only people who were using the tool, funny enough, were like middle-aged women who already knew what they liked and wanted something very specific, and often was like just a certain type of red dress or something. Young people wanted the brand to do it for them because they wanted the label. They didn't want to have their own brand. They didn't have the confidence to like choose their own. It's why we buy branded clothes, right? Because we don't trust their own, we want the brand to speak for us, to say, So, but now it's different. I think we're probably at, it's a different generation. People are more willing to give that a go. And now with Web3, we've got the mechanism, the financial mechanism, maybe the markets to make it happen. I kind of forgot I did all that work actually, but when you said that about personalization, I suddenly realized, shit, I've been doing this for a long time.
yeah.
Yeah.
For it. Well, Harvey, I should run.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It's been a great conversation. Really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with us, and
Thanks for having me, man.
ready. Yeah, of course. Anytime. You are one of the few artists in the group. So you're technically there all the time.
Yeah.
I know you're busy, so no pressure to come in on Discord. But
no, if people want to just if they drop my name in there, I'll answer questions and stuff for sure. Yeah, I can show my face once in a while. Yeah.
So if folks want to ask you any questions, we can ping you in Discord. And
Cool.
yeah, August 22nd. We'll be looking forward to it.
There we go. All right. Cheers. Thanks, guys. Bye.